All right, can everyone see my screen?
Yeah.
Yep. Awesome, thank you. So today we're going to go over Amazon's or AWS's Route 53, which is what Amazon calls DNS registration and traffic routing. Does someone want to start us off and read this portion up here?
I'll go. The DNS domain name web service from Amazon Route 53 is robust, reliable, and scalable, designed to give developers and business high availability and cost-effective routing. End users are routed to internet applications by translating names such as www.example.com into numeric IP addresses such as 192.0.2.1. Computers use these addresses to connect with each other while complying to various policies. Route 53's core function is to route DNS request. The name stems from the port number 53, which is the default port number for DNS. Some of the advantages of using Route 53 include Amazon Route 53 is fully IPv6 compliant, supports DNS security extensions for added security against spoofing, supports various traffic routing policies, provides health checks and failovers that through built-in monitoring of endpoints and RDS DB health. Integration with other Amazon services such as Global Accelerator, improving route speed to multiple regions.
Awesome, thank you for that, Len. So to break that down a little bit, so how do computers know what and where example.com is? We do that because computers only read like ones and zeros, which are then computed into like actual numbers. So the way that we actually tell, well, the internet where example.com lives and like what server to go to, we use DNS to traffic that. Makes sense, right? If you guys don't know, IPv6 is just another, there's two types of like IPs. There's IPv4 and IPv or IPv6. IPv4 is what you see up here, just simple IP, which will actually, I think, Chandra lesson on Saturday is actually covering that. And then IPv6 is just a longer version of it. It's just different routing. They pretty much do the same thing, but just different variants of it. Okay, so what are we trying to accomplish? Amazon Route 53 effectively links user requests to infrastructure running on AWS, such as Amazon EC2 instances, Elastic Load Balancers, and Amazon S3 buckets, and is used to route users to infrastructure outside of AWS as well. Right, if we want to route an IP address, such as like an S3 bucket, to an actual like domain name, such as example.com, that's something we're able to do. So kind of cool. There is a portion of this which we unfortunately don't provide, and it's called the registrar. Register is pretty much you have to pay for your domain name. And so when you pay for that domain name, it's like a service. Like there's multiple services. Like I'm sure everyone's seen like an ad for like GoDaddy.com. That's a registrar. And so you pretty much pay them, make sure your domain name is available. You pay them a fee or whatever, and you're able to like input. It's called the zone. We'll get into that during the lesson. And so you actually map the zone to the main name during that, and then that links to your AWS infrastructure that we'll kind of cover during the lesson as well. So unfortunately, that's something that Code Platoon doesn't provide, so you actually don't get to see it fully working. So this will probably be the only time that we actually cover Route 53 in DNS during the curriculum, I believe, but it is a good concept to be aware of. So just keep that in mind. All right, cool. Let's go to the lesson. Route 53 zone and records. So Route 53 is just talked about is DNS. DNS Route 53. Amazon just calls it Route 53 because of the port 53. There are different types of routing. These are for like different types of records that we'll kind of get into. But there's a simple routing policy. This is all kind of how it's trafficked. You kind of think about it as like a load balancer. Well, I guess we haven't got into load balancers yet, so you may not know what a load balancer is yet. That might actually be on Thursday's class. But anyways, um, we'll just get into it and we'll see if it makes sense. And if you guys have questions, I'm more than happy to answer it. But anyway, simple routing policy is used for a single resource that performs a given function through domain. For example, a web server that serves contents for the example.com website. Failover routing policy is used when you want to configure active pass over failure. Geolocation routing policy. So when you want to route traffic based on the location of your users, and geo-proximity routing policy used for when you want to route traffic based on the location of the resources, and optionally shift traffic from resources in one location to another. Latency routing policy used when you have resources in multiple AWS regions and you want to route traffic to regions that provide the best latency. Latency is kind of like your uptime. So if you want the best like uptime, you can do it that way. It'll just route to whatever. And then multi-value answer routing policy when you use or when you want to use Route 53 to respond to DNS queries, up to 8 healthy records selected at random. Weighted routing policy is used to route traffic to multiple resources in proportions that you specify. For this, we'll just be using the simple routing policy. We're not doing anything special with it, so we'll just do pretty much the default, which is the simple routing policy. Does anyone have questions on this? Maybe as we get further in the lesson, we'll kind of clarify some things.
Can you have multiple policies at once?
No, nope, just one. You could have multiple different records, and each record has a different policy. So it's like a one-to-one relationship. One policy for a record, but you could have multiple records in a zone. Good question, though. If you want to read more about this, if you're really bored, there is a link. There's plenty of documentation around this. It's nothing crazy. But yeah, just know that simple routing policies is probably your go-to unless you're doing something like special or like, I don't know, company production worthy. Okay, creating a public hosted zone. In AWS, Amazon Web Services, a hosted zone is a container for DNS records for a specific domain. When you create a hosted zone for a domain, AWS automatically creates a set of DNS records for the domain, including 4 name servers for the domain. These name servers can be used to route traffic for the domain to appropriate AWS resources. So that is correct. We'll see when we actually go into the console. Here, I gotta actually show you right now. Just log in. And we'll click on Route 53. You can optionally just go to like the search bar and click or like search for like Route 53. I think I created one. Yeah, so I created one, I don't know, a couple days ago. Anyways, so if we go in these records, it's these ones right here that are actually created by default. And you don't have to know anything really about them besides that they're just default and help AWS do stuff behind the scenes. Anyways, let's go back to the lesson. For the example domain, chandra.com, you first create a hosted zone, which will hold all the DNS records. Then routing rules for the records are written DNS records, which route traffic to the domain and subdomains. So, okay, this is just walking us through how to actually do that. So I could actually just show you guys. So one thing to note though, is that when you do create a hosted zone, you want to, and so for this example, we're going to be linking it up to like an S3 bucket. And so when you create a zone, you need to have the same name as your zone as your S3 bucket. So let's just go check S3. Oh, okay. There's a bunch of buckets in here. Anyways, so this name has to map to your zone. Like it has to be the same thing. So like I have like Reno.com. There's like Mikhail's Pokemon app, which is actually pretty cool. I opened that the other night. It showed like a whole Pokemon app. So that looked pretty cool, Mikhail. You'll have to maybe showcase that one day.
Oh yeah, I
Um,
added some more stuff too. If people want to go check it out.
oh, did you? Yeah, let's go look. But yeah, did you make all that from scratch or
Oh yeah, it's in objects, isn't it? Oh, yeah. Yeah, so that Poke Flip game, if you click at the bottom there, it's that. Yeah.
Oh
You
yeah,
click
this is super cool.
you click new game, it will come up. Yeah, if you click new game, you'll see the Pokemon show up on there. Yeah, if you click new game,
Oh, okay.
yeah.
Oh, this is neat.
If you change the color by there by the search bar, you click it, the color changes. That the moon. Yeah.
Oh, the mode, yeah. Oh, that's cool. I like it, man. Good job. One second, we'll just hide that. But anyways, so if you're hooking up to S3 bucket, it's got to be the same as your bucket name. So if we go back to Route 53, and let's just create. So you'll see like a dashboard, hosted zones, health checks. Um, we're not going to be setting up health checks, but just know you can link it to your zone and just have like it'll show like a dashboard that you can monitor the status of all your zones. Anyways, for this lesson, we're just going to be creating a hosted zone. So right here in this corner, hosted zone, and then your domain name would be your bucket name. And that is crucial. It does have to map to it. And say, I don't know, what is this, like week five, day two. And so there are two types. There's a public hosted zone and a private hosted zone. For this, we're going to be doing a public. But if you are in like kind of like a production environment or actually working for a company, more than likely you would be using a private zone. It's just a little bit more secure, and prevents like threats, like outside of threats. Optionally, there's pretty much tags on like every AWS resource. Just, I don't know, you put like IAM policies based on them, that you guys learned about the other day. Or you can just do like monitoring. I believe we'll get into like monitoring later in the curriculum, but yeah, just know tags you could use them for a variety of things. Cool. So I created my zone. As you can see, you've got the few records that are created by default. So we don't really need to do anything with that or really worry about too much. However, if we wanted to create a record, right, we want to map an IP to a domain name, or like an S3 bucket, we would do that right here by clicking create record. I would just leave this as the default, so just go straight to reno.com, but you can put like slashes or like subdomains or whatever you want in there. There is a whole lot of different record types. They all do a specific thing. But for this one, we're just going to stick with the A record. It's like the most common one. The quad A is also another common one for like IPv6 addresses. Just know, I'm not going to go over all of them, but just know that there are a bunch of different records that serve different purposes. But the one that we really want to focus on is the A record. That is the most common. And then here in this value section, we're actually clicking alias. It allows us to choose an S3 bucket. So there's a whole different options. You can click on whatever you want. But for this example, I'm going to scroll down here to the bottom for alias to S3 website. Okay, and choose your region. I believe those or what was it? Was it Virginia? Was it in? I think so. We'll just find that. Where is that? Did I miss it? Cool. And then if you type in it correctly, you can see reno.com. So it will populate. But as long as you have your name set up correctly and like they match, then it'll show up on your S3 side. So we can do that. And then here's your routing policy, right? Like you can only choose one. And there's like a bunch of different options like weighted, all the ones that we kind of went over earlier that you can go back and read about if you want. But it doesn't really matter since we're not actually able to set it up. But anyways, so this creates the record here and it puts it in here. So the next step would actually be logging to like a register account like GoDaddy.com. And you pay for their service and make sure your domain name's open, whatever. And then you link that record on your AWS account to the register. And then you'd actually be able to go to, I don't know, like example.com or whatever your domain name is, and it would show the contents of your S3 bucket or however you have your static hosting set up on your S3 bucket, like your Pokemon app, you can actually have as like pokemon.app.com or whatever you set it as. So that's pretty cool. Instead of just going like an S3 bucket and setting up your static hosting, you'd be able to actually put like a real domain name to it that anyone, not just yourself locally would be able to access. But yeah, unfortunately, Copatune doesn't pay for those kind of services for the students or myself included. So I can't actually show you it working, like and actually go through the register steps. But that's pretty much an intro into DNS and records and zones. So as you can see, you can hold multiple records in a single zone. We're in a zone. I've actually created two zones with the same name. But yeah, you can put a bunch of different, I don't know, S3 buckets or IP addresses or whatever kind of records that you want. They don't have to be like an S3 bucket. They can be like a server, like an EC2 instance. You just put that IP address in there, and it would just go to that instance, and you could host it that way as well. Just know there are lots of options when it comes to DNS, and it can get super confusing when you get into like the more advanced DNS topics. But that's pretty much the basics of it. There's a register where you pay where you pay for your domain name and link it up to your zone. And then there's your zones that hold all your records, and records link to your IP addresses. Cool. And so that's going over all this stuff. As you can see, here's the user. You're accessing the internet, and you plug in your domain that you get from like GoDaddy.com or whatever. That DNS is linked because you paid for it from your register, and it is linked to your Route 53, which then points that request to your S3 bucket. So there's kind of like a general flow of it. So we kind of went over all this too.
Quick question, Reno.
Yes.
For the Route 53, is it pretty much just translating the DNS to the IP address? Is that what's going on?
Uh, so it's messaging. So Route 53 is really setting up your zones and records, and then your register is you're linking a zone to the registered domain name, and the Route 53 kind of carries that traffic and makes that connection.
Okay.
So it's not acting as a DNS. It's not replacing a DNS server.
No, it's not. No. So there also is this thing called an application recovery controller. We're not really going to go over it this lesson. I think we might later on in the curriculum. I'm not too sure. Let's see what it says. Amazon Route 53 application controller gives you insights of whether your application resources are ready for recovery. The application or the ARC, as some people would say. Also helps you manage and coordinate recovery for your applications across AWS regions, availability zones. These capabilities make it simpler and more reliable to recover applications by reducing the manual steps required by traditional tools and processes. And here's some stuff that it allows you to do: manage recovery for multi-availability. Have you guys gone over availability zones yet? Maybe that's Saturday's lesson. You might be doing that. But you'll for sure be going over it. It just pretty much splits up. You have like regions, like all the different regions up here in AWS. And these regions are split up into even like more sub areas. Like they're really just like logical data centers called availability zones. Yeah. So they validate recovery readiness for like multi-region applications, maintain high availability, and then automate recovery. There is a link down here that if you want to read more about it, but however, Copatune, we don't use it and we don't really cover it too much. Let's see, any more resources? This should be deleted out of here. Amazon SNS is like a messaging kind of service. I don't know why it's in the Route 53, but there it is. And then we kind of went over this already. The user inputs the request into the browser, right? And it links up to the domain name, which goes to your IP address that's linked in your zone in Route 53, which points to your S3 bucket or whatever IP address that you have in your zone in your Route 53. So that's pretty much it for the lesson. There's also an assignment that pretty much just does exactly what I showed you guys to do, but it just hosts the Dojo app in like an S3 bucket, or I guess there's like a WordPress press app as well to go over. Does anyone have any questions before we cut it off?
Yeah, and not before you. I mean, it's not the assignment, but I don't know if we necessarily need the recording for that. But there was the in the WordPress one, it talked about optionally buying a domain.
Yeah, don't do that.
Yeah, no, I'm with you.
Yeah,
But
no.
can you do what they're asking you to do there without doing that optional step?
To be honest, you're going to be able to do exactly everything that I've done, but you're not going to be able to host it on a domain unless you want to go out of your way and pay for it, which I don't recommend. It's kind of a waste of your money right now unless you're really, I don't know, itching to see your Pokemon app like live for other people to go to.
Sure.
I think it's a great option when you like when you get to the point where your resume, like you want to get your resume up and going and you have all these projects and you want to show your interviewers. I think this is the best time to, pay the $2 or whatever it is to actually buy a domain name and just tell, link it in your resume for people to go to and go check out your work that you've done.
Mm.
I think that's an amazing way to highlight your skills. But as of now, like you can just go and do what I've done. And I don't know, maybe go back on like previous assignments and like set up an S3 bucket or working on what other previous assignments that you may have missed or have had trouble on. Because yeah, you're not actually going to be able to set this up unless you want to spend real life money at like
That
a
makes sense.
register.
I wanted to make sure that was the answer. I thought that was the answer. Just checking. Thanks.
Yeah, I don't recommend paying a register to host, especially for, doing such a small thing like this. Unless you're really itching to get your Pokemon app like Mikkel up on the browser, which I think it'd be really cool. But I would save that for when you actually start job hunting.
Reno, can you just share that link in the S3 bucket and people can access it?
Uh, in your S3 bucket?
Yeah, that S3, that link that you clicked on to open it up, isn't that all you need to do to share it with somebody else?
Yeah, I think so. However, you're not always going to have your S3 bucket. Right, because that's costing like Code Platoon money
Yeah.
to hold that. Like I should probably honestly like go ahead and just delete everything. But I mean I'll leave it up just for today in case you guys want to like play around with it. But yeah, you could probably just use the S3 bucket um domain name that's created.
Like, how do these things work? Can we know how much it costs, like, per day? Is there like a calculator or something that, like, what goes
So,
into that?
Mikhail,
Hmm.
yeah, the I can tell you because I have a website and I did the Route 53 hosted domain. So, the domain name is going to cost you somewhere between like $8 and $14 for the year, and then the total cost for the S3 bucket is not gonna it's gonna be nothing. So basically, when I look at my AWS cost management profile, like the only thing I see in here is like $29, which is for my AWS Skill Builder account, like and like maybe like a cent, like 0.01. I don't really see anything. And I think